There was a place where the postman carried an umbrella indoors, not for rain, for the pipes, thousands of them strapped overhead in the dark, dripping onto the alleys below, alleys so narrow and so completely roofed over by the buildings above that at noon, in a subtropical city, you could stand in them and not see the sun. Children who grew up in those alleys sometimes developed rickets, not from poverty, from a lack of daylight. This was one city block in Hong Kong, 350 buildings grown together into a single structure, with no architect, no building code, and no government willing to admit it was theirs. And here is the part that gets left out of the story. It worked. Nobody designed the walled city. Nobody chose it. It exists because of a sentence in a treaty. In 1898, Britain leased the new territories from China for 99 years. It was a large, straightforward land deal, with one small exception written into it. A Chinese fort, a few acres in size, sitting in the middle of the leased land, would stay under Chinese control. A footnote, an asterisk. The following year, the British decided the exception was inconvenient and sent troops in to take it anyway. They arrived expecting resistance. What they found, according to the record, was the local official and about 150 residents. So they took it, and then, having taken it, essentially never mentioned it again. And that left a very strange object on the map. A few acres that Britain governed in practice but not in principle, that China claimed in principle but not in practice, and that neither one wanted to be responsible for. Not lawless because someone made it lawless. Lawless because of a filing problem. For decades it barely mattered. Then, after the Second World War, Hong Kong's population rose steeply, and people who needed somewhere to live noticed something about those few acres. Nobody there could tell you no. So they built, not a plan, an accumulation. Someone put up a building. Someone else built against it, using the first one's wall. Someone added a floor, then someone added a floor to that, and where two buildings met, people knocked through and made a corridor. Over about 30 years, the block stopped being a collection of buildings and became one continuous structure you could cross without ever going outside. 350 buildings, not one architect. And it grew until something stopped it, but the thing that stopped it wasn't a law or an inspector or money. It was airplanes. Kai-Tak Airport sat about 800 meters away, and its approach path ran directly over the block. So the buildings rose to 13 or 14 stories, and then stopped flat, all of them, at almost exactly the same height. The skyline of the most densely populated place on Earth wasn't decided by planners or engineers. It was decided by the underside of arriving aircraft. Now, you may already know a version of this place, and the version that travels is the dark one. Through the 50s, 60s, and into the 70s, that version was largely true. Organized crime ran the walled city more or less openly. Gambling houses, drug dens, brothels, an economy of vice operating a few acres from a functioning modern city because no police force considered it their jurisdiction. That is where the reputation comes from. It was earned. But wait. Because the story almost always stops there, and the next part is the part that actually matters. In 1973 and 1974, Hong Kong police went in. Thousands of raids, thousands of arrests, over 1.5 tons of narcotics seized, and it worked. By 1983, the police described crime inside the walled city as under control, which means that for its entire final decade, the decade when photographers finally came, when the famous pictures were taken, when the world learned its name, the walled city was not the lawless place those pictures are always captioned with. The reputation outlived the reality by about 10 years, and because the reputation is the part that travels, most people have never heard the correction. So what was it, if it wasn't that? It was a working-class neighborhood with terrible lighting and unusually good neighbors. Around 33,000 people lived there. They ran noodle factories and fishball workshops. They ran schools and temples and a post office. They ran clinics. And this is one of the strangest details, staffed by doctors and dentists who had trained in mainland China, whose qualifications Hong Kong didn't recognize, and who therefore could not legally practice anywhere else in the territory. Inside the walled city, nobody stopped them. So they practiced, and people who couldn't afford a licensed dentist came in and got their teeth fixed for a fraction of the price. An accident of jurisdiction had produced a functioning, low-cost healthcare district. And then there's the postman. Someone had to deliver mail into a structure with no street plan, no numbering that made sense from outside, and passages that changed as people built. So the postmen learned it. They wore hats against the dripping pipes. They went up through one building's stairwell, out onto the roof, across the gangways and ladders that linked one rooftop to the next, and back down into a different building's darkness. The route existed only in their heads, because up there, above 13 stories of shadow, was the other half of the city. The rooftops were flat, they were joined, and they were the only place the sun reached. So that's where life went. Children did their homework up there. Elderly residents sat out. People kept gardens. A place with no planning at all had improvised the one thing it was missing and put it on the roof. In January 1987, the governments of Britain and China jointly announced that the walled city would be demolished. The stated reasons were real ones. Sanitation was poor, fire risk in a structure like that was extraordinary, and there was no way for a fire engine to reach the middle of it. And the 1997 handover was coming, which meant the awkward legal question the place was built on was about to be answered whether anyone liked it or not. Residents were given until 1992 to leave. Compensation came to around 2.7 billion Hong Kong dollars, roughly 10,000 US dollars a person. Some took it and went gladly. Some fought it. Some simply didn't believe it would happen. Demolition began in March 1993 and took just over a year. 350 buildings, 33,000 people, half a century of improvisation cleared down to bare ground. What stands there now is a garden. Kowloon Walled City Park opened in 1995. Pavilions, ponds, and paths laid out in the style of an early Qing garden. It is genuinely beautiful, and it is deliberately quiet. Almost nothing of the city was kept. One building survived, the old yamen, the original Chinese official's office, the very thing the 1898 treaty had carved out in the first place. The footnote outlasted everything the footnote created. It's tempting to file the walled city under cautionary tale, a warning about what happens when nobody is in charge. But that reading skips the evidence, because what happened when nobody was in charge was that people built a city, badly lit, badly plumbed, genuinely dangerous for a while, and then ran schools in it, and clinics, and a post office. They organized garbage collection. They fixed each other's teeth. They put the playground on the roof because there was nowhere else for it to go. Nobody planned any of it. Not the enclave, not the buildings, not the height, not the ending. And still, 33,000 people made somewhere to live out of a clerical error. We tend to assume that order comes from above. Kowloon is the awkward reminder that quite a lot of it doesn't. Next time on Margins of the Map, we go from the most crowded place that ever existed to somewhere that is almost entirely empty. A lake in southern Siberia so deep that it holds a fifth of all the unfrozen fresh water on the surface of the earth, and so old it has been filling since before there were human beings to look at it. Lake Baikal. If Kowloon shows you how much people can build in one city block, Baikal shows you how little of the planet we've touched at all.